When did your journey to France start?
Chris and I have been married for 30 years almost, and we first started talking about coming to France then, really. We explored it, thought about it, and a cousin of mine actually moved over to France with her young children, and it was we were thinking about it then but didn't feel ready for it. And my parents had a house in the Dordogne for more than 20 years, so very much Francophiles, you know, and it was crystallising, I think, over the years and thinking about when's the right time for us, really.
In terms of that journey, where was the coming together on this dream?
Very much from when we got together, really, as a couple. I mean, before we were married, we both like travelling. You know, we love holidays, and France has been somewhere that we've both loved. We've been to many times. My brother owns a house in France in the Gironde estuary, so we've visited that many times. Plus Deborah's parents had a house over here, so we had a couple of locations that we would come to now and again, and neither of those places were where we wanted to live. They were France. There was bits that we liked that we would visit, but they weren't our ideal spots. And we've looked around various places, and this is where we sort of settled on.
When did this dream start to become a reality? When did you start to look, and what did the process look like?
2020, I think, just after COVID, was when we really thought we want to do this, and we came over, and I don't know how many houses we looked at in different areas, probably about 30. Some that we liked, obviously, some we didn't like, and then we came home, and again we were sort of umming and ahhing it, you know, can we, can't we? My biggest problem with my French isn't very good at all, you know, and that was my big worry. But as a couple of years later moved on, I decided, oh, let's just go for it. Let's do it, you know. So we came over last year, had a good look about, decided this was the area, this was where we wanted to live. And then in November, we did another visit in this area, found this house, and the process started with buying it.
In terms of the process, you know, how did you come to this house? How did you go through the process of selecting the houses? What were your kind of criteria, and how did you end up here?
Okay, so we had quite a broad criteria. So at that point, we looked at two particular areas. So we were looking up in Deborah, which we also love, and down here, which is, in Lot-et-Garonne, which is where we've ended up. And that trip was, quite tiring, because obviously we were going quite long distances to have a look at houses. And again, we looked at about 30 odd houses that time. We looked at country houses, we looked at places with big gardens, loads of land, lots of barns, the whole, shebang, places with pools. We were really thinking hard about what do we really need for our life as we're going forward. And when we came to Lauzun, it was a chance. We drove into the village and we just said, let's just stop here for a second. Really loved it, very pretty. And we spotted the immobiliers office, and we just said, oh, let's just nip in there. So we nipped in, and so the lady that we spoke to in there, who ended up selling this house to us, was really great. And we sat down, we looked through all her portfolios of the houses available, and she took us to see a few places. But one of the places she took us to was this house, and as soon as we came into this house, you in particular, Chris, loved it, didn't you? And he couldn't get it out of his head, really. And it was actually one of the first houses that we saw in that whole couple of weeks. So we saw this house, and then we went and had a look at loads of other properties, and kept going back to townhouse, access to amenities, do we really want to be looking after a really huge plot of land? Do we want to spend 3 hours a day mowing the grass, etc.? And actually we came to the realisation that we didn't want that, and that we wanted something that would be manageable but large, so that we could accommodate our family coming to stay with us, and that had outside space, but that we could do something with, but didn't need to be huge. So we were thinking, you know, do we really want to have a property that has lots of maintenance? I really wanted a pool, and I really wanted a view. So those were actually the three things I really wanted: were a pool, a view, and a covered terrace. And I didn't end up with the view, the pool. I have got a covered terrace, so I will get, you know, my eating out space, but I think you always end up compromising, don't you, when you think about what really matters to you. Particularly now that we've got the house and we're living in it and enjoying it, having the accessibility of a lovely little shop, restaurants, a bar, you know, cafe, etc. You know, this village has everything that you could possibly need in a small / large village. Pharmacy, you know, access to, you know, medical support, post office, somewhere to get your Amazon deliveries even, you know, it's just very convenient, isn't it?
What was it that as you came in you went, wow, this is what we want?
I don't know, I'm not sure what it is about houses, but you walk into a house and it just says, yes, this is it to you, or it doesn't. Often it's got all the things you're looking for, but for some reason it's not right. This house, walked through the front door and I just fell in love with it immediately. And it was funny really, because it was literally one of the first houses we saw. And everything we saw after that, I just kept saying yes, but I still prefer the townhouse. And originally I wanted land, you know, I did want, as Deborah, I didn't want a swimming pool necessarily, but I wanted views and I wanted gardens and stuff. But I started to think, do I really want to be gardening, you know, 2 or 3 times a week, cutting lawns and weeding and all that? I'm coming to France to retire, to relax and enjoy my life. And as we both thought about the convenience of having a shop across from you, a little bar, restaurant, butchers, boulangerie, everything's here. You know, if you suddenly need a pint of milk, it's across the road. It's so easy. But the house in general, I love the house. We don't know the history, but it's over 200 years old. It's got character. It's got different bits and pieces. You know, it's got the courtyard outside, which is ideal. It's not overlooked. I mean, that's super. It's a little sun trap. And it's been done reasonably nicely. There's still work to do, but we can live in it without doing anything if we want to.
What was life like before coming to France?
I have been working in the NHS predominantly as a director in the NHS for a really long time, so on and off for about 30 years. So very high pressurised job, working really long hours and often away from home. So I often had contracts which were not where we live. We live in the Cotswolds, and so I was often working in London or in the Midlands or up north and so on. Yeah, it was you know, sort of high pressure really.
Chris, what were you doing?
I've had various jobs over the years. I was a photographer for many years in London. Also garden design. I did a garden design course, so I've worked as a gardener. Various bits and pieces really. I've had quite a varied lifestyle.
Where were you in the Cotswolds? And the Cotswolds is a very pretty place. Mm-hmm. So why move from the Cotswolds?
Absolutely, I think it's a really good question. It's actually something that our son said to us. Why would you move from an area of outstanding natural beauty? But of course, France is different, isn't it? And I think when you're retiring, you want something that's a fresh lease of life and different places to explore and so on. So. this area is great for getting to, within a couple of hours we can get to the coast, we can get to the mountains, we can drive down to the south of France. There's just so much we can go and explore. We absolutely love home, we love the Cotswolds, and we have lots of family there. So we'll be going backwards and forwards anyway, we'll be appreciating and enjoying that still. We still have a place in near Stratford-on-Avon. And we'll be deciding whether or not we keep that as an investment or whether we just give that up at some point. But it's different, isn't it? France is a different experience for us. And when we were thinking about retirement, we did think, shall we go to Cornwall? Shall we go to Norfolk? Shall we go to somewhere completely different in the UK, but we kept being drawn back to France and what you can achieve in France, really.
Deborah, you found the house and you wanted to go for it. Take us through that whole process.
What I would say is, first of all, picking your estate agent really important, because we had the estate agents were fantastic and in supporting us through the whole process. All three of the ladies that we dealt with in our immobilier were amazing. So in terms of the process, once we decided that this was the house we wanted to buy, we put in our offer at the end of our 2-week holiday, and they put that forward to the person who was selling the house, and we had a little bit of discussion around that over about a week. The offer was accepted, and at that point you then go through to the next stage of the process. The whole process took from November to April, when we finally signed the contracts and took the keys in early April. I think it can be quicker than that. It wasn't as quick as I suppose we thought it might be, but it was fine. It suited us perfectly fine. And we and our vendor both used the same notaire, so that probably made the situation a little bit easier as well. The notaire was English speaking, which was helpful. French, but English speaking. And in terms of the process of buying a place in France, you have to become accommodating for how long it may take to get a response to a question that you might think is simple, that when you're in the UK you can ask the question via your solicitors and they'll immediately talk to one another and you might get a response fairly quickly. That wasn't as quick as I suppose I was used to, but in some ways it felt a bit smoother. So you get diagnostic reports via your estate agent through the process, and they were actually really quite detailed and they had a lot of information in them. So it's not usual to get a full structural survey in France, but these diagnostic reports give you quite a lot of information that's pretty useful actually in determining the state of your house. Does it look like your roof's okay? Are your electrics okay, etc.? And that was really quite helpful. I suppose one of the stressful things for me was working out how to manage the money side of it. We chose Currencies Direct to be our broker for this process, and I was really quite anxious about that in the first place, because you're putting an awful lot of cash into this place where you've never really done any investments in that sort of thing, not done that type of thing in the past. But actually they were amazing, really straightforward, really helpful, and then all the transfers of funds were managed by them, so I would instruct them and then they would pass the money over to the notaire. So I would say getting all that sorted out early doors, which we did, was a good thing to do and helped to make the process a bit more smooth for me. The latter part of the process was the most stressful bit for us, when you are asked to provide certain documentation by the notaire and it's alien to you. And for example, things like the source of your funds, so having to prove where your funds came from was an element that we found a bit difficult, because we had brought sources of funds from savings pots and pension and so on, and our bank were not able to provide a certificate to say this is where all the funds came from, and it's not that straightforward with British banks to do what the French want you to do. We got through it, but that was a little bit trying, wasn't it, towards the end.
Talk to us more a little bit about some of the practicalities and the other things you had to do along the way to actually get to the house.
Okay, so another thing that we needed to put in place was a French bank account. So we chose Crédit Agricole Britline because they've got an English-speaking line, and we have a dedicated person that we can speak to there whenever we have any issues. She set up our house insurance, for example, which was really helpful. And down the track, she will be able to help us with other things like car insurance and that sort of thing. We also obviously had to go through the visa application process, and we thought quite hard about whether or not we wanted to go for a 12-month visa initially or a 6-month visa initially. And we decided to go for the 6-month visa to start with for a specific reason, which was around the health insurance. So Chris will be retiring in terms of British retirement age in January. So he will be able to have an S1 form, which will mean that fairly quickly he will just have access to the French system, and we wouldn't have to cover him for a whole year with the health insurance, which can be quite expensive. And I'm 60, so I will have to pay for that, you know, for a year whilst we get into the system. When I was looking around at the options that you have for the health insurance, I found that quite overwhelming. And I have actually ended up with some options which are going to be financially manageable, but some of them are extremely high. And I would just say to anybody, make sure you shop around and make sure you get advice, because do not go for them. Don't spend £10,000 a year on health insurance because you don't need to. So we decided to do that. As it is, we couldn't get the timing right to get the health insurance. Otherwise, we would have just gone for the 12-month visa. So we thought, right, we'll go for the 6-month visa and get the house ready, which is what we're doing now. And our intention, which we stated when we applied for our visa, was that we are going to be applying for the 12-month renewable visa. When you go through the visa application process, obviously that's another stressful thing. And I was doing that alongside doing a contract job, which was very demanding. And I actually retired from the NHS at the end of October, but I've been doing contract consultancy work. And, you know, that was really quite hard work. But once you've been through it, you know what to do. And I would say, you know, don't be scared of it. I wouldn't be scared of it again. But you have to be very systematic about how you approach it. So get all the look at the guidance. There's loads of guidance available, and get all your documentation in place ready, so that when you have to fill in the forms online and so on, you know you're ready for it. So we did all of that, and then you have an appointment at the TLS office in London or Edinburgh, wherever you choose to go, Manchester, and we chose London. So on our, we got an appointment really quickly. We knew we wanted to come here in June, and we went down for the appointment. It was a really hot day, and we went down to the office, and we were very nervous, and we had our 2 packs of information which had absolutely everything in it we could possibly have, and then I had another pack like that of anything else that they might possibly ask us about, so that I could prove we had what was needed. So you go down to the TLS office, and we were lucky because it was a really nice hot day, but you can't go into the building until just before your slot. So if it were raining, you'd be stuck outside trying to shelter. We didn't have that problem, which was very fortuitous. But you basically go into the visa office, and you go through various stages eventually you're talking to an individual who then goes through every piece of paper that you've got, stamps things, puts them into another envelope for it to go to the embassy for them to actually review your application. And that whole process on that day was incredibly, I think, very smooth. It was very straightforward and everybody was incredibly helpful. You're scared of it, but you don't need to be, you know. And actually, we opted to have our passports and our visas sent back to us by courier. Otherwise, you have to go back to London to pick it up. And although it's an extra cost, it was well worth it. And in fact, we got our visas within 5 days, which was great. So it was a much more straightforward process than we imagined it would be. The other thing, of course, you've got to think about is getting a removal company and so on to transport your goods and so on. And we did a lot of research to find a removal company that would work for us. Yeah, we found all of that kind of side of it quite stressful. But you've just got to have your end game in mind, haven't you? It's obviously different to doing all of this at home in the UK, where it's just so much more straightforward, isn't it?